Oh, there we go. I'm based in Canada, so of course, I'm so keen to hear and learn from all of you on the ground for what's happening in Europe and in Fortress Europe, really right now, but which we know is a continuity that's escalated, but in many ways nothing new, and we've seen this crisis uh, go on for decades, and really especially since 2015. So what I was going to do was just make my remarks somewhat brief, and really, keen on an exchange and to see what I can offer that is really that might be useful for the context that you all are in, and of course, again, to learn from all of you. So, as we know and has been said, and as we're going to hear further, what's been happening in the Ukraine in terms of the crisis for displaced peoples is so obviously and blatantly so deeply racist in terms of who is getting safety and who is able to access safety and who is even determined to be Ukrainian, right? So not only are displaced peoples from other countries, from other regions, so whether it's African refugees, international students, a number of South Asian and Punjabi international students, who are being cast aside. And we see this literally, in the kinds of segregations that were happening at the border when Russia first invaded Ukraine. So the ways in which buses were segregated, the ways in which people were forced back into lines, but also that, this was both a way to reinforce the ways in which whiteness in Europe operates, but also to determine that European citizenship is whiteness, right? Because not only were Africans and international students in Ukraine who were so-called third country nationals treated differentially, but also Afro-Ukrainians, right? And also those who are minoritized, like Roma communities, Romani communities, and others. So we see the ways in which citizenship became differentiated in so many different ways. And here in North America, this was reproduced both in of course, you all know in Europe, but also this ripple effects into North America, because we had here mainstream news commentators who were making such explicitly racist and Orientalist depictions of the refugee crisis and the border crisis in the Ukraine, right? So we were hearing media commentators literally having quotes that, oh, the Ukrainians who are being displaced, quote unquote, seem so like us. And, quote, we're talking about Europeans living in cars that look like ours to save their lives. And here, of course, they're talking about white people, right? They're not talking about Black and brown refugees and displaced people or other minoritized communities. So these kinds of media depictions not only reinscribed whiteness, but also actually normalizes violence and war for the majority of the world on the global South, right? So the idea that war and violence is not normal on white bodies, but is actually normal for the rest of the global South. And so the Arab and Middle East Journalist Association, for example, put out a statement saying, quote, this type of commentary normalizes tragedy in the Middle East and Africa and South Asia and Latin America, end quote. The Foreign Press Association of Africa said, quote, we are disturbed by the unfortunate opinions that our Western colleagues continue to publicly express about the distinction they see between war and suffering in Ukraine and those that have taken place in poor countries, end quote. And so this kind of deep racism at the border boomerangs around the world, right? Because we know that at the same time that the world was focused on the devastation of the Ukraine and what was happening in Ukraine, at the same time, there was almost no media attention given either to Black and brown peoples trying to flee Ukraine or to the fact that the US had drone bombed Somalia the same week, or that the famine and the slaughter of Yemen was continuing by US-backed and Saudi-backed war in Yemen, and that the occupation of Palestine was continuing, that the violence and the interventions by the US and NATO countries and European countries in Haiti were continuing at the same time. So I want to say that it is so important that we understand the racism that is happening at the border as connected to forms of imperialism that also continue, right? That local and foreign policy work together to create the system of white supremacy, to create the system of anti-Blackness, to create the system of anti-Indigenous racism. And so, this is so important to contextualize. So coming back to the border, as you all know, even better than me, what was happening at the border is so deeply a refraction of the ways in which the border has operated for so very long when it comes to Fortress Europe. Fortress Europe is the world's deadliest border. And especially so, the numbers continue to climb since 2015, which was the time of the so-called Syrian refugee crisis. But of course, we know that 2015 was not a crisis only for Syrian refugees. It was a crisis for so many displaced people across the Sahel region, across Africa, across North Africa, across the Middle East, across parts of South Asia, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. And one of the things I wanted to touch on a few things. One is that, right now there's a lot of talk about how deaths in the Mediterranean have gone down, right? That the number of deaths in the Mediterranean have gone down. And I think it's so important. And, a lot of times countries in Europe, Germany included, will put out statistics about how the rates of death are going down in the Mediterranean, and that somehow means that the Mediterranean is becoming safer to cross, right? So that's some of the rhetoric that we hear. But I think what's important to work through in those statistics is that it is not actually safer to cross the Mediterranean, because even though the so-called numbers of deaths have decreased, and really talking about statistics is so gruesome because even one death is too many. But even if we are to look at the actual death rate, the death rate has increased. And one of the reasons that the death rate has increased is because Europe has outsourced its borders to countries in the Sahel region, to countries like Libya, countries like Africa. The recent announcement that was made between the UK and the Rwandan government, where UK is outsourcing border enforcement to Rwanda. So what that means is, Europe is increasingly paying other countries in the so-called global South to do its dirty work for it. And what that has meant is that, some of the statistics by a researcher called Rhys Jones, he said that for 1 out of every 4 people that was attempting to enter Europe by boat, that the number of people who are actually dying in the Sahel was even more, right? So that death has now shifted from the Mediterranean itself to now across the African Sahel region, right? So that route is being increasingly militarized. And so it's so important when we are talking about the Mediterranean and Fortress Europe that we also look at how this death is being outsourced further and further and further outside of European borders. And that was happening in the Ukraine too. As some of you may know, that Ukraine was trying to join the EU. That is, one of the ongoing sources of battle between the forces of Russia, of Ukraine, NATO, and the EU, and the broader geopolitics of the region. And one of the ways in which Ukraine was trying to argue for its admission into the European Union was that the Ukraine and Moldova are actually part of the EU's border assistance mission. So even though they're not formally part of the EU, Ukraine and Moldova had agreed to become part of the EU's border assistance mission. And so, border controls are increasingly a way in which Fortress Europe continues to expand, right? Both through Eastern Europe, also through the Middle East, and also through the Sahel region of Africa. Right now, for the EU, it is almost impossible for African countries to have trade or aid agreements with the European Union that don't involve migration control. And so to give you some context is that, there are over 24, approximately 24 to 26 different African countries who are required to make border control mechanisms. So whether that's literally boots on the ground, whether they're so-called transit processing centers, whether it's detention centers like the torture centers in Libya, whether it's training of border enforcement agents. So there are 26 African countries who do not and cannot receive aid from the European Union if they don't agree to prevent migration. And of course, we know that, one of the primary reasons that African countries are even forced to rely on European aid is because of an ongoing legacy of colonization and imperialism, right? As Walter Rodney and so many Pan-Africanists would remind us, that Africa is not underdeveloped. It was forcibly underdeveloped and plundered, like the rest of the world, when it comes to a legacy of imperialism and colonization, right? And so now, in order for Africa to even receive money from the EU Emergency Trust Fund for Africa, as it's called, those countries have to accept military equipment, border security equipment, and surveillance to prevent refugees from leaving the continent through what is called the Better Migration Management Program, right? So this is how far and how extensive European border controls are. And it is estimated that basically in this decade of 2021 to 2027, the EU plans to spend $38.4 billion, $38.4 billion in border security in the span of less than one decade. And I know all of us can think of so much more, so much better that this world could be doing with that amount of resources, right? We could literally feed everybody on the planet. We could make sure everybody has clean water. We could make sure everybody has education. We could make sure everybody has childcare. We could make sure that, people are taken care of with $38.4 billion. That is more than the GDP of some national economies in the world. And that is just going into border security. And so, the ways in which surveillance, patrols, interdiction, border deterrence, more and more border patrol officers on the border, this is really the reality of Fortress Europe. So I say this all to highlight again that when European officials say, oh, the European border is not as deadly as a decade ago, or the European border is not as bad as a decade ago, or that it's getting better, there are less deaths, that is not true, right? That what they are doing is outsourcing that violence. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is even our language of border death is so passive, right? People don't happen to die crossing the border. A lot of people don't die crossing the border if they have a Western passport, right? Whether that's a US passport, a Canadian passport, a passport to a European country, a passport to Australia. We know that for many people, right, those who have money, those who have Western nationality passports, those who look white or proximate to whiteness, those who have all of those kinds of privileges, they actually travel the world in luxury, right? Like in many ways, migration has never been as easy for particular people as ever before. The world is literally at their fingertips, right? They vacation all across the planet. They go on yachts, they go on luxury vacations. So it is not the case that migration is increasingly dangerous. It is increasingly dangerous for some by design, right? Because that is the reality of white supremacy, of racism, of colonization, and more. And that reality is deeply historic, right? Like if we look back to hundreds of years ago, the same reality was playing out and has continued. So this migration crisis is not new, right? The entire foundation of Europe. The entire foundation of Europe is based on these kinds of deeply unequal, violent structurings where, over 20 million Europeans became settler colonists, right? Came to places like the Americas, where I live now, went to places like Australia, literally went and settled on indigenous people's lands, committed genocide against indigenous people to say, barren land, we're going to now live here, right? We're now going to violently settle these lands. Over 20 million Europeans became settler colonists, traveling as they wished, moving as they wished, while millions of Africans were enslaved, while millions of Asian people were indentured, right? And so what we're seeing today is that same kind of continuity of who can move under what conditions, who can move freely and who cannot, right? Who cannot live with dignity and safety, and who can actually move freely. And so today, the ways that vacationers, diplomats, expats, the ways that these people move is so different than the ways refugees, asylum seekers, migrants move. Even those different categories of people represent power differences in the world, right? Who we call an expat, who we call a diplomat, who we call someone on vacation, who we call a quote unquote legitimate person on the move, and who we call a so-called illegal person on the move, right? So this is so important that we even think about how deeply embedded these historic forms of violence and how they replay in the contemporary moment. And again, coming back to the Ukraine, if we understand these and see these historical continuities, then we see, oh yeah, this is history repeating itself, right? White people are being welcomed. White people, we are told, quote unquote, look like us, right? And people who are Black and brown, people who are visibly Muslim, people who are minoritized are not welcome into countries in Europe and around the world. Where I am in North America, for decades, there has been a fight for universities to accept scholars from other parts of the world, right? And it has been a completely uphill battle. But now all of a sudden, universities have special visa programs for Ukrainian students, right? And not for other places. And so the entire idea of Europe, exists only in relationship to imperialism, to racism, to colonization, to white supremacy. And the idea of maintaining Europe as a white place only exists because of these historical continuities. And that's why we see so much border violence, right? Or what I would say is border killings, because again, it is deliberate killings of certain people to deter people. The reason that border killings happen is to try to deter people, right? The reason that the Mediterranean is made to be so dangerous is by design. There is nothing inherently dangerous about crossing the Mediterranean. It has been made dangerous by state policies so that they hope people won't make the journey, right? It's called a deterrence program. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about that is so deeply hypocritical and violent currently about in the European discourse around migration is how now there's so much emphasis on eliminating border violence, not by making it easier for people on the move, for migrants and refugees, but by this new kind of discourse of trafficking and smuggling, right? So we see now that European countries are saying, oh, the border, the Mediterranean is so violent, so many people are being exploited. And of course, people are being exploited. I'm not in any way denying that. But the reason that the entire economy of trafficking and smuggling even exists is because people are desperate. And the state and the European Union has made it impossible for people to move in ways that are safe. So people are relying on networks of trafficking and smuggling, and criminalizing smuggling and trafficking or individuals or networks of people doesn't make it easier for people on the move. It just criminalizes migration more, right? So the response isn't, oh, the European Union good, traffickers bad. The response that that we need to be advocating for is that focusing on trafficking and smuggling is not the root cause of violence. The root cause of violence is that the European Union has made it impossible, by design, has made it impossible for freedom of movement to exist. And if there was freedom of movement, then there would be no organized criminal networks, because people would not have to rely on them out of desperation, right? So what I want to end with is, the slogan of so many social movements that are fighting, who are really fighting and articulating that what we need is the freedom to stay and the freedom to move. That people have the freedom to move, that there should not be any deportations, there should not be any pushbacks, there should not be any detentions, and that freedom to move is not a politics of generosity, right? It's not the European Union or Western countries doing a favor, right? It's not a politics of humanitarianism. This is a politics of decolonization and reparations, because we live in a world where some people have deliberately been denied the right to a good life, have been deliberately denied the right to safety. So when we say freedom to move, when we say freedom to stay, we're not appealing to people, to government's generosity. And this is not charity. This is solidarity. This is reparations. This is something that is being claimed as a right to be able to have a good life, the right to be able to live on this planet in a good way, especially with increasing climate change. And that this is fundamentally a fight for people's freedom and dignity. And that is really the articulation of freedom of movement, right? The fundamental freedom of movement, which so many, specifically and especially Black organizers, the Black radical tradition, Pan-Africanists have fought for in terms of the fight against imperialism and white supremacy. And so I just want to, end with how important that invocation is. And I want to close with the words of Eduardo Galeano. Eduardo Galeano was a great Latin American revolutionary, and he wrote, "The world was born yearning to be a home for everyone." The world was born yearning to be a home for everyone. And so this fight is, how do we make sure that we all have a home and that we all have a right to home and a right to safety? Thank you all.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was really powerful. I'd like to hand over to Olalekan, and then afterwards to Brother Moaimutsa, and then we go into questions and answers or discussions.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, my name is Lekon. I'm a representative of the group of Africans from UA in Germany. Just like my fellow colleague said, our group comprises of students, families with children, and workers. I myself, I'm a sport person. So basically, we've been through a lot due to the war in the Ukraine. From the border in the Ukraine, we face racism, discrimination. We face a lot of things, violence included. So getting here in Germany, we were hoping would get something, a warm reception, but that is not the case. Thanks to the Black Coalition group, they've been assisting us. They've been providing the support which the government should do, but the government has failed to do. So basically, our fight right now is that we want equal protection, just like the Ukrainians, because from what we've seen in Germany, the Ukrainians get a different treatment from we, the third nationals, and other non-Ukrainian nationals. So basically, we have an open letter that states our demand and what we want. Because right now, I don't know how it is in other EU states, but here in Germany, Hamburg, the students actually have been considered, but they are still making it difficult. And we, the other groups, are being left out, like the families who have temporary residents, the workers, and other people who are even undocumented have been left out of this group. So basically, Our open letter, we've submitted our open letter to the town hall here in Germany, Hamburg, the Internal Affairs, and the Ministry of Education. So we are still hoping for a positive response from the government. That's why we've called for this solidarity for all refugees who come from the Ukraine. So basically, we want support, and well, for me, I want this fight to go on, and I'm hoping with our solidarity we can get something. Thank you all, and I want to hand over to Dr. Maimusa.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Brother Maimutsa from the Black Community Coalition for Justice and Self-Defense, and as well as the Arivati Network Community Care for Black people and people of color. Our organization, we have seen what is going on in the Ukraine with racialized people. So the whole story already started inside the Ukraine. It continued at the border. It continued border crossing and in the neighboring countries. And of course, it's also continuing here in Germany. So when we have seen the EU Council saying that they will sort of help all refugees despite of skin color, ethnicity, nationality, and talking about that for some minutes, and then right at the end came that those third national countries, we will rescue them, but we will deport them. We will send them back home if there's no excuse in a way. And this attitude, first of all, it was not really recognized by the majority of the people. So the majority of the European people have the perception everybody is helped, no matter. So we had really to argue with individuals, organizations, doctors, and so on, to explain to them that it's not like that. Secondly, this decision opens the door to what we call structural racism. So the politicians are making a decision, but the decisions on the ground, in the immigration office, in the social authority, are made by the people who are working there. And these people look at a Black person or person of color, and if they say, I'm fleeing from the Ukraine war, then they are not believed. You know, it's like they are even excluded from the promises that have been made that there is immediate access to social welfare and healthcare for all of the refugees that were fleeing. That was the actual saying of the EU Council. Yeah. So by excluding the third country nationals from the temporary protection, the base was laid for this structural racism on those individual levels, institutional levels, whatever, was opened widely. And this is what we see. The consequence is that there's not even the promises are kept, for everybody wants to be even more repressive and more exclusive and more discriminative than politicians originally were saying. This is why we support the self-organization of the Africans from Ukraine. And there is a human rights to freedom of discrimination, there is a human right of treatment inequality, and those things should be at the center and not creating the lines on which grounds discrimination is still reinforced on a daily level. Thank you. Yeah, we want to, are there any questions, maybe from you, Harsha, or to Harsha, from other participants who have been listening? Are there questions to our fellows from the Africans from Ukraine?
I have a question. I'm wondering for all of you, for people like me who are, based in North America and based elsewhere, what kind of solidarity, material solidarity or otherwise, is most useful? What can we do to support and show solidarity?
Yes, being vocal, being visible, echoing the experiences of the people, and it's really such cannot be underestimated. A lot of the reasons why I think these type of injustices continue to perpetuate themselves is the lack of information, that they tend to have a way of masking the violence in the policies. So, for example, we have here in Hamburg that the Senate and the Ministry of Interior were coming out with a proposal, and in this proposal they are asking for a blocked account of €10,000. They are asking for €800 a month, good language skills, enrollment in a university, all these things to be provided within 6 months. But the way they brought it out to the press, for those who are unaware, they think, "Wow, this is great," but they don't know what conditions have to be fulfilled in order to get entry into the university as a student as a third country national student from Ukraine. Whereas those with Ukrainian citizenships, there are programs being developed, created for them, so they can integrate with ease, without having any financial obligations. So I think the main thing about the struggle is, of course, awareness raising, being vocal, taking a stand, a clear position, and of course alliances. Really working together, seeing what are the situations of refugees from Ukraine in Canada. Is it the same situation? And if so, then the struggle also has to be not only local, national, but transnational as well. Yeah, maybe others would also like to say something. What you think could be of assistance?
Can I say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Ernest. I'm in Leipzig. I think the laws and the rules they are coming up with every other day here is quite exhausting. So and like our leaders just said about the block account and everything, I think that is too much, because most of us, if we have that kind of amount in our bank account, I really don't know why what we are doing here. We'll just go back to our country and invest and start up a new life. Because having that kind of amount in the block account and still paying the school fees, and you have to still pay your rent, feed, upkeep, and other necessary bills. So I think that is too much. I don't really know if there is a means we can even live here and maybe get to Canada or the US. I heard Biden made a speech about helping refugees, hosting or something like that. So I've not really gotten a clue on how to get cross over there. So if there is any information of how we can get to the US, I think the US or Canada, at least the language barrier is going to help us very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. So Ernest was just again drawing attention to the problems here, that there are also additionally language barriers which make it difficult. At the reception centers, the officials are even denying that the refugees are escorted. So they have to go in alone without anybody accompanying them. And the language, the interpreters are below standard. So this is another additional challenge. And people are willing to relocate or move to places where they feel they can better access into the universities. Most are students, some in their final year, and the priority with the students is to continue their education.
Yeah, thank you for the question of solidarity, and also to Ernest for the hint, like US and Canada could take people in. We know US and Canada are spending a lot of money sending airplanes with weapons and stuff to the Ukraine. So I suppose they are empty when they fly back. So this could be something at the first place. We also know, you have been saying, there are special programs for the brain training of Ukraine Caucasian nationals to get them into the educational or academic circles there overseas. Yeah, again, we see the problem that if it's white Caucasians, they are seen as an asset. If it's Black and people of color, then they are seen as a problem. This is the ground of what racism actually is all about. They should be actually keen on getting students on any level that already have done something, so they also could like sort of better up their system. The second thing is also here in Europe, the solidarity is quite high, quite okay. But the problem is if the civil society keeps on compensating on what is a state issue. Taking care of refugees is a state issue, and the money, as you were also saying, that is spent in border control, in weapons, in wars, in whatever, if that would have been used to, go for economic changes, that would be better invested than it is now. So we have to be careful also in a way. Of course, it can be compensated, but it will also be used again to divide the societies, and those who want to help, those who don't want to help, to frustrate those who always have to help again for the same reasons. So it's actually a matter of state, and this is why I also strongly recommend the political engagement and solution. Also, the politicians from abroad who are far away can sort of address the topic here in old Europe.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Further remarks or questions?
I did have a question, but it seems like it's already been asked, but in a different way. Yes, like I don't know if there are like programs over there in Canada for, let's say, refugees that were were fleeing from the war. If like there's some program or something on ground that can be of help. Okay, in terms of education, because a good number of people fleeing from Ukraine were students and would just love to get the degree and so they can continue with their lives. And right now, I mean, we're not even allowed to stay, talk more of starting school. So I don't know if there's any program on ground, whether it's and the application process, if it's not so cumbersome. I would really like, we generally would really like to know of that.
Okay, thank you.
I can drop in the chat the program. Can everyone see it? This is the program that Canada specifically has implemented with respect to Ukraine. One of the pieces of advocacy that is going on in Canada is that
Are you sharing a screen?
Oh, no, it's in the chat.
Okay.
It's a link in the chat. So this is Canada's basically a special visa, an emergency visa for people who are fleeing Ukraine. It's valid for up to 3 years, and it's a 3-year permit, and it's an open work permit. And so at the same time that people are applying, they're eligible for up to 3 years to also work in Canada. And an open work permit means you can work anywhere in Canada, because there are some work permits that are very restricted to particular sectors or particular employers. And so it also is eligible for students and anyone who is looking to do, whether it's high school, but also post-secondary level, are eligible to apply for a study permit once in Canada. The huge significant problem with this program, so as you'll read it, you'll see a lot of things have been exempted, right? So the regular visa processes have been suspended. It's an expedited process. There's now specifically Canada-Ukraine office to process visas. The main issue, there's also jobs that are being made available, post-secondary education issues that are being made available. The major issue is that this is for Ukrainian nationals, and that this is one of the primary fights right now, is that there's this program, but it does not extend to nationals. But there are also, I'll send you another link here. That is also for those who are looking to leave. And then I will also post for those who are non-Ukrainian nationals what the process is in Canada. Give me 1 second. And then did I understand correctly that a lot of people are international students?
Yes.
Yeah. Canada has opened up more and more spots for international students to come study on a study permit. The issue, though, is, of course, very exorbitant tuition fees. There is a great organization, I will post their website as well, who have been fighting for the rights of migrant students. and to expand what is happening for international students and migrant students. Are those links all helpful? Is that the kind of information that people are looking for?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Was it Ernest and Godsaid who were asking? Is this info helpful? Or feel free to ask me anything else and I'll answer or drop links.
God said? Are these helpful? Are these the links you're looking for?
Yes. I've not gone through them. Maybe after I'll just read through them, because I just quickly went to go and check some of them, and there's like a lot of writing, and I can't be in the meeting and read them at once. So I'll check them later. But yes, this is exactly what I was looking for. Some programs in place for refugees. Maybe a couple of people can apply and find their way over there to continue with their lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have also Tomiwa and Linda.
Sorry, I got a cold, that's why I couldn't talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I think everything I've already been talked about the situation that we're being in. Most likely, I'm way more interested in the American opportunity because I've already got an admission to Canada before, but the tuition is very high, just like what you talk about. So I don't think there's really a way there for me personally. So I would like to, I think America is way preferable, but I would like to see the opportunity here in Canada, in Germany here too. So I want to have the opportunity here too. So that's what we're talking about, fighting for the same, like having one voice. That's very important. That's what we want.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, good day, everyone.
Hello, puppy. Do turn on your videos if you can.
Okay, sorry.
Make it more personal.
Okay. Yeah, good day, everyone.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'd also like to emphasize on the what Tumima just said. It's not about going to all over the place to get a proper education. The thing is, if we can find an opportunity in Europe to study, because for us, I know I'm going to be very personal, or I don't know if everyone is going to be on my side too, because I don't know the intention of each and every one of us are on the group, but for me, if we can have a proper way to stay in Germany and then get the proper education that we all wanted, I think it's going to be a very, very good idea. But with what is going on about the Black people not getting a place to study at the moment, like the cumbersome conditions that you have to meet in 6 months, and I think we have a very big problem with that, because I don't think all of us can afford to get all of those conditions that they are really demanding from us. So in my opinion, I would like to suggest that we all come together and fight these, how am I going to say it? If I say racism, I might be too disrespectful anyways, but then it is what it is. So it's not about going to Canada or going to America, but if there's a chance for us to stay in Germany and then have a very good education and afterwards go back to our country if we so desire, then I think it's a very good thing.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to comment on that, Harsha?
No, I appreciate that. There folks are thinking through and articulating so many different strategies, and I think it's it all makes sense and it all resonates, right? Which is trying to figure out where the struggle is, how to collectively fight where we are, how to also move as an act of self-determination to try to find if it can be better somewhere else, but then of course also needing to fight where we are to try to change those conditions. And I know it's not easy, right? That is the struggle for migrants and refugees, is the constant battle to figure out where to stay and where to move.
Exactly. what is the situation of third country nationals in Canada fleeing from Ukraine right now?
Yeah, it's as I was mentioning earlier, it's brutal. It echoes the same way as it does as you all have described in Germany and across Europe, which is that there are all of these special visa programs that are now prioritizing people fleeing Ukraine. But it is very specifically for Ukrainian nationals. So, the main visa program that Canada has put forward for refugees and for people for temporary assistance coming to Canada for up to 3 years to live and work in Canada is for Ukrainian nationals. The same is true for some university programs that are opening up for Ukrainian students to come study. It's for Ukrainian nationals. And so, again, not only is that discriminating against non-Ukrainian nationals fleeing the Ukraine, it also is discriminating against those who are non-Ukrainian who are fleeing other parts of the world, right? Crises in other parts of the world. And so all of it works together to basically just favor Ukrainian nationals at this time in almost all categories for visa acceptance, whether it's refugees, asylum seekers, temporary foreign worker, or not temporary foreign workers, but work permits, work visas. There's a new special jobs in Canada kind of job bank that is going to have a stream for Ukrainian nationals seeking jobs in Canada. So it's working against third country nationals fleeing the Ukraine and also people from other parts of the world right now. And so you'll see one of the links I put in here is a recent news story where it's the very same issue. Non-citizens of Ukraine don't qualify for temporary refuge in Canada. And so it's a very similar struggle where there's now a fight against these discriminatory programs that are only for Ukrainian nationals, but not for non-Ukrainian nationals fleeing Ukraine. And I should just point out one thing, which is that, Canada is a really big, important part of this picture, because Canada has one of the largest Ukrainian diasporas in the world. So the fact that, Canada is going literally hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians are going to be coming to Canada. There's a lot of mobilization and advocacy from the Ukrainian community in Canada. And so, fighting for equal treatment, even though Canada seems farther geographically than Ukraine, Canada has a huge part to play in equitable treatment because it already has one of the largest Ukrainian diaspora communities. And so part of it is also, wanting to push for and see solidarity from the Ukrainian community in Canada to encourage them in their advocacy efforts, that when they are talking about, Canada accepting more Ukrainians, that they should also in their advocacy, because they're a powerful lobby and advocacy group, to push for solidarity with third country nationals fleeing Ukraine as well, and not just Ukrainian nationals.
Right. Thank you. Okay. What may be interesting for Harsha to know is that for several years in Germany, they have a system where asylum seekers or those seeking protection are restricted to a certain local area. So if refugees arrive, for example, in Hamburg or in another big city, it's not necessarily that the first country of arrival is where they would stay. There is a distribution system that reallocates them to certain areas. So you do have some being allocated to a city like Berlin and having the feeling that it's overcrowded, that they are lost there. Or at the same time, we have people who are distributed to a very small village where there's nothing. They can't attend language classes, there's no university there, and yet they're obliged to remain in that local area. A change is possible only through a transfer, and the transfer has to have very, very grave reasons why a transfer is necessary. So occasionally it's possible to transfer if you have family who are going to take over all the costs. So it's not just enough to say, oh, my brother is in Hamburg, or I have a host in Hamburg. The host must be willing to take over all your social welfare costs, yeah, as well as giving you accommodation. So that means then you probably have good chances of transferring. In the case of Africans from Ukraine, there was the announcement that this restriction to a particular local area would not be applied, and that people could go and apply for social benefits without having to apply for asylum. But there have been several cases where people have been forced to apply for asylum, and at the same time they are being restricted to a particular local area.
Thank you for that information. And thank you, all of you. I'm not sure, I dropped in the chat, I have a meeting that's unfortunately starting now because it's still morning in my time. But it was so good to connect with you all, and all solidarity and respect, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you all and just to learn about the struggle on the ground.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time, for being here with us, for sharing all this information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Be well, and you have my email. Feel free to be in touch anytime.
Yes, yes, I look forward to that. So, like as we said, it's very important. As you see, the situation that you are facing is not a national one. It's crosses borders. It's in the U.S. It's in Canada. You know, this white supremacist system, which is trying to discriminate between refugees, is not a Hamburg one, and it's not a Berlin one. It's not a German one. It's worldwide. Yeah, so definitely, if one wants to beat the system, it starts with collaborating. That we have to work with each other. We have to work with each other as Africans. We have to work with each other as African students from Ukraine. We have to connect with the others in other cities and build these networks. Build a movement that can have some impact. So this is why on Thursday there will be this meeting. Yes, and we hope it will be a fruitful one.
Okay, I have another question. It's kind of more informational about the possibility of continuing their study in the state of Hamburg. They said it's now third national countries also allowed to study, but is there any requirement regarding this question, or it is the same as Ukrainian national?
No. It's the information is a deceitful one. It's not correct. The conditions which the government has given in order for you get the fictitious certificate, but up to 6 months. And during this time, the government is going to be, for example, inviting you to interviews to ask for you to prove that you cannot return to your country of origin as it is life-threatening or you're under political persecution. Some of the conditions also for you to change the fictitious certificate into a residence permit is providing a blocked account of 10,000 euro, or showing that you have a monthly income of 800 plus euro, showing proof that you have good language skills that allow you to study. This is then usually the C1 level, and also showing your letter of admission into a undergraduate degree course or a master course or a PhD course. Yeah, and enrollment into a university is not a passive participant. Yeah, not a Gasthörer. You must be enrolled in a proper degree program. And actually, this is nothing different from applying for a student visa, as was the case anywhere. Yes, so you can apply for a student's visa in whatever city you are, and these are the same conditions that they will give you. So in a way, the government is, being misleading information by giving the impression that the fictitious certificate they are offering you is not the same, is not under the same conditions as what the Ukrainian citizens get. Yeah, the Ukrainians get a fictitious certificate, but it is attached to Section 24 of the foreign law, and they have been defined as entitled to have it. The only thing they have to show is their nationality. In the case of third country nationals, you are not entitled to the Section 24 of the foreign law. You are applying for it, but you are not entitled to it. Yeah, so you have to prove all these conditions which they say in order to study. A Ukrainian citizen doesn't have to show any of that.
Yeah, I got it. I got it. Thank you very much.
So I would like to hand over again to Brother Moimutsa. We're coming to the close, and we can just have like closing remarks. This is the first session, and please go around and mobilize people to participate in this European Action Month for Solidarity. People can write their own solidarity statements. They can also organize events, and it starts today and it goes up until the May 25. May 25, there are rallies planned, and we will participate and also bring the issue forward on the Africa Liberation Day on 25. May 25 is going to be an European-wide rally. Okay, so Brother Maimutsa.
Yeah, I want to conclude that there is still a long way to go, not only in the situation here for the African international refugees from the Ukraine war, but for all our brothers and sisters, for all POC, for all racialized people to get equality. What we learn from the situation here is they are making small steps. First, they say you have to go back to your country as the first option when you come out of the Ukraine. Then they say you can stay without being illegalized till 23 of May. Then they extend this non-illegalization till end of August. Now they come along with options saying, yes, you might get a license to study, and put other obstacles in your way, what you have to do, what you have to prove, to make you pay a high price on the one side so that you stand quite a chance not to meet the obligations, but on the other side, spreading the message into the world and into their own society, saying we are going to allow the international students fleeing from the Ukraine to study in Hamburg. And we will also see that it will be a German-wide initiative that they can study everywhere in Germany. So for us, of this, we should not let them fool us this way. You know, we should be very clear that equality is not a bit. Equality is not a piece of something. Equality means what it is. It's the same treatment, and especially it's not even that they have to do something very special. The programs and the logistics, how to treat refugees from the Ukraine, is there, is established, is very easy actually. And the effort now to treat you differently from all the other Ukrainian refugees of Ukrainian nationality is actually more expensive. So it's not just not giving you something, it means they are taking money and effort in their hands to do that to you, instead of going the normal human equivocal way of saying, yes, there's war in the Ukraine, and those who have suffered under the war and had to flee the country from what they have been doing there are under temporary protection. Get access without any condition to social welfare, to the labor market, to whatever. And they should also be very aware of the chances you people are bringing also to Germany. So there are many fields, especially medicine, where they don't even have enough own students, where they don't even have enough personnel. So they are actually, they should be happy about every person that comes here and already is on their way of being educated to what they also need here. But they don't see the assets. As I said, they only see the color of your skin and fall into the white supremacy attitude to just send you away, you know, by seeing you not the potential that is with you, but seeing you as a threat, sort of, for being different from what they feel white supremacy should be all about in Europe. So I think we should use these days, these months of solidarity with all refugees from the Ukraine to really carry the spirit also beyond that specific situation. There are also refugees from other places that have been in Germany now for years and are still not there where the Ukraine national refugees have come to right now. So also the refugees, we don't want to forget. We don't want to forget the Lampedusa group, for instance, here in Hamburg. We don't want to forget people who are illegalized by not having papers, which is also a situation the Ukraine war also enforces on people, as we know right now. So all this solidarity should be a universal solidarity, and it should be about equality and freedom from discrimination and racism. We have a lot to teach on that way, so don't let us be slack. Let us really see the effort, but also the chance we have to have that we can make a difference, that we can have an impact. We already push them some sort of the way. Now we have to kick the stick out of their hand they want to hold in front of us, and we should jump over it. There is no stick to jump over. We are just walking straight up as human beings, proud Africans, proud people from wherever we come from. There is no difference. Thank you very much for listening, for participating, and also for trying to create more events here in the internet, on the street, in the different places, and most importantly, to self-organize and connect each other in the different cities, not only in Germany, but beyond Germany, in France, in Italy, in Portugal, in Spain, in UK, in Ireland, in Switzerland, and as today, like also Canada, maybe US, to exchange the ideas and to spread the word of solidarity and equality. This is what we need to advocate for. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Brother Maimutsa. If there are any closing remarks, please go ahead. Just raise your hand. Only closing remarks. We're at the end of this very important meeting today. The next one is on Thursday. We will send out the link a day before. So if there are no more closing remarks, then I would say good night to everyone, and see you next time.
Good night, man. Thanks for the time.
Thank you for the meeting. So interesting.
Miss Peter.
Okay, at this point, I take my leave.